Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to another edition of Marks on Wrestling with your host, Jeremy York, and myself, co-host Donald Martin. Today we're going to be doing a review on WrestleMania V that was submitted by Nick, and I'll butcher his name.
Apaluski?
Apaluski.
That's what I'm thinking.
We apologize if we got your last name wrong, but anyway, this is a review we've had for a little while. We just had so much going on with WrestleMania 40 coming. Now that it's over, we can get back to doing this requesting on. So how are you today, Jeremy?
A little tired. As you can tell, I got a bit of laryngitis. I had a sinus cold last week, and finally on the uphill of that, still got a bit of a cough. Now it's just a matter of getting my voice to come back. And this is actually my first show since I got sick, and I'm doing a show every day for the next 4 days.
Oh goodness, you better be taking some meds or getting cough drops or something.
Yeah, well, I just had a cough drop. The last of it dissolved. Yeah, I've been taking all kinds of medicine for it, and seems to be doing pretty well. Other than that, I feel fine. But those first few days were brutal.
Yeah, it's been over a month, and I started getting some sinus stuff really bad. I felt really bad. I was actually at work. Come home and I went to the doctor, got a shot, and within a couple of days I felt good. Yep. Still dealing with a little bit of sinus stuff, but it's the normal autumn, springtime stuff here.
Well, for us up here, the weather has been going back and forth between, 60, 70 degrees, and then all of a sudden it's down below freezing. And it just kept going back and forth.
Yeah, we haven't been going below freezing, but the temperature change has been evident here also the past couple of weeks. It's been, in the 80s, and it drops down into the 60s, 50s. It was a little chilly this morning. I just got off work this morning, and it was a little chilly. We had a house fire right before I was getting off, so I'm still recouping from that. I had to stay. It wasn't that bad of a house fire, but we wound up saving pretty much everything except a few contents. The biggest thing is everybody got out safe. So
that's good. So for those that are going to be watching, this is a pre-recorded show. We're doing this on Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, and it'll be airing on Sunday because we both got a little something going on. I didn't realize until the other day that Saturday is going to be Backlash. Yes. And I'm only going to be able to watch about half of that.
Well, I'm gonna lost my train of thought when I got a message on my phone. Saturday, we're having softball Saturday, and then Sunday I work. So I got some stuff going on Saturday morning, so I may not be able to watch. What time is it coming on? Is it coming on Saturday evening?
It's coming on. The pre-show starts at 11 o'clock in the morning for you.
Oh goodness.
So I'll be able to watch the first couple hours, but I'm not going to get to see the main event because I have to take off no later than 3, preferably 2:30, because I have a 2-hour drive for an investigation that I'm doing that night, and I did not even think about that. That was going to be the night that Backlash was going to be. I really wanted to watch that all the way through because they're in France.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was coming up this quick. It seems like only yesterday, just a couple of weeks ago, WrestleMania 40 was going on.
I know.
But I just jumped in real quick. And of course, everything that's been going on with Raw and SmackDown, they're doing that draft stuff right now. The whole Bloodline continuation thing going on there with Solo and all that stuff. And I really haven't got to sit down and really watch a good Raw.
I just watched some of the clips from the 2 nights of when they were doing the drafts. I do have to say the ones that got drafted from NXT are very well deserved. But I felt like that they could have probably added a couple more, pulled a couple more out, and put them on the main roster.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm dealing with an issue right now.
But the ones that did get picked, they've earned it. Especially Dragunov.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it last night. Yesterday was a long day at work. I was dead tired yesterday. We got done with everything. I kind of went to bed a little early. I did watch the last part of Raw, I think. Saw a little bit going on. Yeah, Backlash this weekend. I'll get to at least watch it Sunday when I go into work, if I don't get to Saturday.
Yeah, I'll watch part of it Saturday. Then I'll probably just watch the whole thing over again Sunday. And then maybe the following week, for the following week, we can do the review. So speaking of reviews, this is what we're going to be talking about today, WrestleMania 5.
Mega powers collide.
Yeah, it was a fun event, but for the time frame, it wasn't like the WrestleManias back then weren't quite as exciting or explosive like today's WrestleManias are. I don't want to say that it was more of a glorified house show at the time, but it did kind of have that feel because all but 2 of the matches, and there were 14 of them, all but 2 of the matches were less than 10 minutes. And one of the 2 matches was at 10 minutes and 1 second.
Yeah, there was one that was like really good, and it wasn't even a match. It was the Rooster and Bobby Heenan. It was nothing.
Yeah, one match was half a minute.
Yeah, and part of that maybe, like I said, before we came on air, it may be the fact that we don't get to see the storylines, remember the storylines leading up to other than the main one. Saturday nights, back then it was Saturday night's main event. I do remember watching those when I was younger, and all of them leading up to Hogan and Macho having a fallout over Elizabeth, more or less. Um, I wonder how much of a storyline. I know it was a storyline, but I wonder how much Mancho was not playing part of the storyline. He was more or less the. I've always heard he was very protective and very paranoid backstage of Elizabeth and all.
Yeah, that's
Locking her in the locker room and stuff like that until the match was over. And
that's very well known with everybody. And I remember seeing an interview with Bruce Pritchard where he was talking about the whole thing from all the way back to WrestleMania 4. They would do film little bits and pieces, and then they would hold those back until much, much later. Where it's like, okay, well, now we just discovered this clip, we just discovered that clip, and start putting pieces of the puzzle together.
I read somewhere when I was doing some research on the show on this WrestleMania where what was it? It was where it was I forget who it was, but somebody got thrown into Elizabeth and or maybe it was Macho. Anyway, somehow or another she got hit and knocked down or thrown down or something, and they said that Randy wanted to meet up in the hotel room and just go over that whole thing for hours on end of just the knockdown of Elizabeth. And they were the guy was like, I'm not going to hurt her, man. It's like, come on. And just overly protective, I guess. Paranoid almost. He had issues with Jake the Snake. Didn't know for sure that he didn't believe that Jake had the Cobra devenomized and all that stuff before that match.
Yeah.
So that's one reason he had him so hyped up on that, so worried about it. That's one reason he had kept the snake on there a little longer than what he was supposed to.
To say that Randy not only being overprotective but also being a perfectionist would be an understatement.
Yeah. Now, as far as an entertainer, wrestler, I mean, he's way up there.
Yes, he was. He was top notch.
He was good wrestler back in the day.
Um,
Sadly, like a lot of them back in those days are gone now.
Yeah. I would say that for WrestleMania 5, the Hogan Savage match was probably the second biggest main event WrestleMania had up at that point, behind Hogan and Andre.
Yeah. They opened up with. Is that the one that was in Canada? Is that the one that was in Toronto, or was that 4?
The one that was in Canada was the following year, WrestleMania.
Okay, that was 6. That was Hogan and Warrior.
Yes.
And so this is the one where they had at that time the WWE Women's Champion
Rockin' Robin
sing the national anthem. It's like, I mean, kudos to her for getting up there and doing it, but it wasn't a great singing performance, I'd say.
Not great, but not terrible either.
No.
It made me wonder why they chose her instead of getting musical performers, because they had Gladys Knight the year before that, and they had Aretha Franklin in WrestleMania 3.
It might have been something along the lines of they had somebody booked and then canceled last minute. It's like, oh, we got to have somebody out there.
It could be, and I've looked, but I hadn't been able to find anything on that. But they did have musical performance by Run DMC.
Right.
The the lack of celebrities at this WrestleMania was, to me, was kind of prominent because every other WrestleMania before that, they were all over the place. But we had Run DMC and Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was ringside.
Yeah.
They talked with him for a few minutes in the middle of the show. Trump Plaza was huge. Sitting on that place looked almost like it was a circus tent.
It is. Let's see. So it was promoted as Trump Plaza, but it was really called the Boardwalk Hall. But it's connected to the Trump Casino.
Yeah.
And another thing that's real significant about this place is that this is the first and only time they've done back-to-back WrestleManias at the same location, which I thought was pretty cool. The way that they had the layout for the arena, I thought was really, really good. The way that they had the lights strung up, the way that they had the logos placed, where the commentator booth was at. Because when you look at everything on this side of the arena is the entrance. They come out. Here's the ring, and over here is where the commentators were.
Right.
So they could see them as they came out.
Right.
And the commentary between Jesse and Gorilla, I think, is very underrated for this event. It may not have been like how Gorilla and Bobby were at the Royal Rumble 92 and WrestleMania 8.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the commentary work on this particular one is right up there.
Yeah, they always did really good together. One of my favorite commentators always going to be JR. Just because I grew up listening to him, on Mid-South and in the old days, Now, I always liked Vince and Jesse. Back when Vince was, the good guy, the babyface announcer, and you had the whole
experience that.
You had the old Jack Tunney, was the general manager, the owner, president, whatever, they threw him in their ass. And they said that a few times on the show at WrestleMania V. Jesse did.
Yeah. When they did the overview with the camera, it looked like it was a very, very large group of people, and the attendance was just shy of 19,000 people, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems, relatively small compared to, these days.
It is. But back then, wow, that was a real good crowd.
Yeah, I noticed a big difference because as soon as that was over, on Peacock, I was watching that, and as soon as that was over, I started watching 6. And the difference in the setting and the atmosphere was so much different. It was like this. 5 was kind of, for what it was good, but it was kind of smaller, older looking compared to 6, where it was like these spotlights everywhere and just like huge arena. Just really amped up compared to 1 year prior.
Well, when you have when it comes to having Hogan versus the Warrior, I mean that's your top 2 baby faces. But in this case, Randy Savage was a top baby face, and then he wasn't.
Right. He turned the heel pretty quick on one of the main events when he hit Hogan backstage after Elizabeth got knocked down, and
Yeah.
Hogan carried her out to the back and left Macho in the ring defending against two guys, and that whole scenario, him come back there and just started going after Hogan and blaming the accident on him, and then pulling out the whole "you're just after my title" and blah blah blah. And
Yeah, so that was the match of the night, and watching this WrestleMania, it gave me the feel of a regular boxing card, where most of all the other matches don't really matter per se,
right,
even though a good portion of them did have something of a storyline, like Demolition and Powers of Pain, Jake and Andre. They had something, but they just weren't anywhere close to what Hogan and Savage had.
right. Well, I mean, back then you had Saturday Night Main Event. It came once a month, maybe every couple of weeks.
I
don't remember exactly, but it wasn't like you got it now, where it's 2 shows a week, 3 shows if you count it NXT. So it's definitely a lot more time to build up storylines over the course of a couple of weeks, as opposed to back then.
Okay, here it is. This was not Saturday night's main event. It was called The Main Event. So this was like Saturday night's main event, but different. And this one here, they just had this one here once a year. Mega Powers versus the Twin Towers. So that was when all of that blew up. And ironically,
if I remember right, that bleeds over from Survivor Series. If I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah, it leaked over from Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble, because the Twin Towers eliminated Hogan. And then Hogan eliminated the Boss Man. And this is all after Hogan dumped Savage accidentally.
Right. And you kind of see, stuff like that happen. It's like, all right, now they're fixing to build something up between them two. It's like, oh, they're fixing to get into it. And that's goes par for tag teams that wrestle for so long, that are not, they didn't come in as tags. They joined up and became a tag, and one turns on the other, and then you have them two fighting each other. It's kind of like the Jey Uso and Jimmy and Jay.
Yeah.
It just kind of falls into that regular routine of betrayal. It was Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels did the same thing.
Okay, Saturday night's main event, they just did it randomly. First, it seemed like they were doing it every quarter. Then there was one month where it had 2 of them. Then it's every other month. They just did them at random. Then they went 14 years without having one. But Saturday night's main event was pretty significant back at the time. Very much like how Clash of the Champions was for the WCW. But yeah, everything led up to the Mega Powers explode, and the artwork is pretty good. At least the one that I have that's on the Wikipedia page. I'll show it here.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So and they had always done really good artwork for their big events, I thought.
Let me pull that up.
So Rock and Robin started out with America the Beautiful. Um, Jesse and Gorilla were the commentators, like they always had been for the big events. And then I actually forgot about this, but Tony Schiavone was one of the backstage interviewers.
Yeah, when they announced his name, I was like, "Oh crap, it's Tony Schiavone."
I knew that he was there for SummerSlam '89, and he was also commentating for the 1990 Rumble. But I had forgot about him being here for WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, watch some of these old shows, and you see some of these guys that are in wrestling that may or may no longer be with WWE, and or went to different routes, different organizations, and even the wrestlers, you know, even the wrestlers, with different personas, different gimmicks, and all back in the day. I did some research on Terry Taylor after that, and seeing him. I mean, he was at WWF at the time. He was in and out. He was with WCW and these small organizations, and he'd come back to WCW, or come back to WWF. He did it like several times, different organizations.
I think he did
He
it
finally
more
retired.
times than anybody else.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stories about him. Um, he just never stuck around anywhere for long. So WrestleMania 5 opened up with Hercules and King Haku.
Yes.
On paper, it seemed to be a run-of-the-mill match, but when you think about WrestleMania, and nowadays they make a big deal out of what match is going to open up the event, and they probably still did then. We want to make sure you have the right match to start everything off. And after looking at all of these matches, I think that one probably was the right match to open up. And Hercules got a big pop from the crowd.
He did. He come in swinging that big chain around, cleared the ring, and then started the match off. That match. Let's see if I can bring it up.
That match was 7 minutes long, and
Yep.
and this is where the commentary actually made me laugh. When Haku had Hercules in the bear hug, and he didn't have it quite like he should have, and Gorilla was talking about that. And Jesse said, "What do gorillas know about bear hugs?" And he said, "Gorillas know a lot about bear hugs." He said, "Not without missing a step."
Yeah, when you got a good commentator, you get a good pair there when they can just feed off each other that quick. Yeah.
They were great together. And Hercules and Haku was a really good match. And the first 4 matches that Bobby Heenan was coming out for.
Yeah, he was out there quite a bit. You had a lot of managers, valets coming out during
Mm-hmm.
that time. Is this the?
And the intro music that Hercules has that big big sound, that Roman, almost Olympic
Mm-hmm.
song for him, which was perfect for him. And Haku, I think, came out to the kind of music that Jerry Lawler used for his.
I'm thinking Hercules. If I remember right, he was billed as Hercules Hernandez
He was.
early on in his career.
Yep. Yeah, he was Hercules Hernandez, and then he just dropped the Hernandez part.
And that was probably, I don't know if he was Hercules Hernandez at WWF or he dropped it when he came over.
No, he was Hercules Hernandez because that's how they introduced him in WrestleMania 2.
He was tied in with Million Dollar Man at one time, if I remember right.
At some point, he was, yes.
Maybe before Virgil was around.
Something to do with Bobby Heenan selling Hercules to Ted DiBiase like a bodyguard,
Yeah.
and Hercules didn't take too kindly to that. Um,
Hercules wound up winning that one.
Hercules ended up becoming Power and Glory with Paul Roma, and they were a good team. Um, Kind of surprised they didn't have a tag title run. But Hercules at this time, I would say he was probably easy a top 5 baby.
Sorry, I got every
He got
time I
one.
move, I got something going on with a cord or something, but I'm not touching it. It don't make any sense.
I know. I see it every now and then. But he got one of the biggest pops of the night from the crowd.
Your second match, you got The Rock.
I have no idea how that match came to be. I'm going to guess that was just a throw together match for the sake of the WrestleMania. Because you had 2 of the biggest guys on the event taking on 2 of the smallest guys on the event.
Oh, I put a note on here. And when I wrote these notes, I wrote them, a couple weeks ago. So I'm having to decipher what I wrote. The Twin Towers, Big Boss Man Hakeem. Hakeem was, what was his other character? What was his other gimmick?
He was the one-man gang.
That's right. So he had been around for quite a while. And I think I remember reading somewhere where they gave him that gimmick and he was trying to make it work, and he just kind of did his whole dance routine, kind of comedy, to his character, and I got a note here. It says clothesline. I'm guessing from Hakeem to Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels, like, he sold that thing like big time. Like, when he hit him with that clothesline, I thought he took his head off.
Yeah, a lot of people thought he killed him.
Yeah, that was like, oh my God, that was brutal.
And that was really payback for when it was Shawn and the Boss Man. Shawn was running around, and then he ducked under something or flipped over the boss man, and then he turned around and nailed Hakeem. It just happened so fast that he never saw it coming.
Yeah, and it goes back to early on with Shawn Michaels. Being the good wrestler that he is and able to sell really good. You some of them were way over extreme sales, but he sold that clothesline really well.
And then Sean, when Hakeem tagged in, he did this little dance. Then Sean tried to do the moonwalk. Not
I
bad.
didn't see that. I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that was towards. I think that was when Hakeem first tagged into the match. Sean did the moonwalk. Not very pretty.
So don't do the Michael Jackson thing.
Yeah. um, match for 8 minutes.
Yeah, 8 minutes 2 seconds.
Match. Yeah, it was an okay match, I guess, but to me, it didn't seem like there was any kind of a story there between them. Nothing going into the event, I don't think. But it was probably put together just to get these guys on the card, which
And it makes
half of the event was like that.
yeah, that's what I was fixing. Like half the event was probably like not a big storyline, but let's throw them in there.
Yeah, and back then, nobody knew that Shawn Michaels was going to end up being one of the biggest wrestlers, one of the biggest names.
Yeah,
Not
he looked a little heavier back then than he did later in his career. Just I ain't saying he's overweight or nothing. Just looked like he had a little more pounds on him back during the Rocker phase, at least that match, than he did compared to the Heartbreak Kid version.
Yeah, I think once and Marty broke away from each other, that's when Shawn really started taking better care of himself. Um, Otherwise, there was nothing really about him that look wise that stood apart.
Right, and I think the Rockers is WWF's Vince's take on Rock and Roll Express.
No, the Rockers were together before they came to the WWF. They were known as the Midnight Rockers in AWA.
Okay, so they just dropped the midnight part of it.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's a play on Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express. You got the Midnight Rockers.
It could be.
Because them two tag teams were going at it for years. And Ricky Morton is still wrestling. I know we talked about that earlier on one of the other shows. Rock and Roll Express was always one of my favorites growing up. That and the Fantastics.
Let's
So
see.
Twin Towers wound up winning that one.
See, they were. Greg Gagne suggested the name the Country Rockers.
That don't make any sense.
No. It was inspired by Living After Midnight by Judas Priest, so that's where the midnight came in.
Okay.
So they put that in as Midnight Rockers. So evidently it wasn't because of Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, though I could certainly see it that way. But Okay, the next match was Brutus the Barber Beefcake taking on $1 Million champion Ted DiBiase. This was the second longest match in the night at 10 minutes and 1 second.
I recall Beefcake coming down to the ring, and he had a bag with him. He has clippers inside the bag, and well, I was kind of thinking, I was like, well, he's got those clippers, and the crowd is so close to where they're coming in. You know, it's like he probably stuck in the bag, you know, keep from safety reasons. You know, because when they were coming down to the ring, I mean, it's like their crowd is reaching out, and they're like, there's
They're right there.
no space there. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say that he had them in a bag before some of the times too. But I really remember on this one because they were dressed in red, white, and blue, which was completely in contrast to what he was wearing, which is black and gold.
Brutus? Oh, that night of the match.
For this specific match.
Yeah.
It seemed like Brutus and DiBiase kind of, what's that word? They complimented each other. Because Brutus was wearing black and gold, DiBiase was wearing black and gold. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't catch that one.
Yeah. DiBiase is mainly black with the gold dollar signs.
Yeah.
On the side of his. Well, Brutus was wearing gold tights with the black fishnets on the sides. So it was almost like they planned that thing together.
Virgil was there on ringside too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Virgil was wearing his typical
Butler type vest.
Yeah, it's like a maroon color gray. And he was yelling at Howard Finkel when he was doing his introduction to make sure to introduce him as the $1 Million champion instead of the $1 Million Man.
Right. At that point in time, that was the whole Hogan and Andre couldn't buy the title, and they put the title up for grabs since he surrendered to Andre or surrendered to the $1 Million Man. And since he couldn't buy one, or since he couldn't buy the World Wrestling Federation title, he made his own, bought his own. And supposed to be all diamonds and solid gold, and I did some research on that not long after that. And there was a couple real diamonds on it, like on the back, but most of it was, cubic zirconia.
Yeah, it was
14 karat plated.
Yeah, like one step away from being real diamonds.
Yeah, they estimated that it cost $40,000. That belt cost $40,000 to make.
Which
and thinking
money.
That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money now, but back then that's a lot of money for a side piece.
Yeah.
And what I saw
more than the other titles did.
Right, and through the years, it has popped back in and out through different storylines and all that. But last I heard that DiBiase actually has that belt. His son gave it back to him after that run, because he had the belt for a little while.
Well, LA Knight also had the title as well.
Did he?
And Cameron Grimes. It's almost like they bring it out every decade.
Mm-hmm.
DiBiase had it in the 80s, Steve Austin in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
DiBiase Jr. in the 2000s. Actually, no, I think he might have been more in the 10s. And then LA Knight and Cameron Grimes in the 20s. So we'll probably see it here in about 6 or 7 years again. That match ended up in the double count out. I don't think there was anything really between those two leading up to this that I can remember.
And with it ending in double count out, I would probably say that they probably kept that feud going for, just a little bit. I don't know that for sure, but
Well, I don't know if it was publicly acknowledged that Beefcake and Hogan were best friends.
Beefcake and who?
Hogan.
Okay.
I don't know if it was public knowledge that those two were best friends at that time. And if they were, it would make sense for Beefcake to be wrestling DiBiase because of his history with Hogan.
Yeah. It's sad, which I think he owns a gym or he does something now. Beefcake does. But I always liked him back in the day. He was one of my favorite, characters that really didn't get a big push. Back in the day. Of course, he had issues with the parasailing accident, almost took his life, and that kind of put a damper on his career.
Beefcake was another one of those that was in the top 5 babyface in the company, and Stanley over with the fans, and he was supposed to get an Intercontinental title run the following year, right when that parasailing accident happened.
Yeah.
But truthfully, did he need a title? Probably not, because he was over.
Right.
Whether he was a champion or not, the fans really liked him.
Yeah, it's funny, it came from because before then he was just called Brutus Beefcake, and there was a match between Adrian Adonis and Roddy Piper.
WrestleMania 3.
Brutus come out and cut Adonis's hair, and then that's when he started doing the Brutus the Barber Beefcake. And when he first come out, he just had these little scissors, his little hair cutting scissors, like. So that's when he come up with this idea of getting the head shears,
Yeah, so if not for the parasailing accident, who knows how far Brutus would have gone.
Mm-hmm.
The next match was a fun little match. Bushwhackers versus the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers.
Yeah, and I remember them, they came out with Jimmy Hart, and I remember them announcing that they were now residing from Memphis, Tennessee.
Yep.
Waving American flags and all that stuff.
Yeah. Like little tiny American flags.
Yeah. I was like, they're still the heel, but they're trying to get more liked, I guess. Saying they were coming from Memphis, Tennessee, but the Bushwhackers, I remember them, at least one of them maybe, with somebody else. They were called the Sheepherders, if I think right, if I'm correct. Maybe somebody else I'm thinking of back in the day. Yeah, they're always a comical group. During their matches and all.
What's funny was that at the start of this match, they get in there, they start attacking everybody. pull Jimmy Hart's jacket off. They're getting ready to turn when the Russos come in, go into their corners, and Jimmy Hart runs in to get his jacket. He's caught in the middle. Bushwhackers throw the Russos against each other, sandwiching him, and his jacket goes out flying. So that was a fun visual right there. And it was also this match where when the Bushwhackers were coming down, that was when you notice after all them steps that they come down, then they get on the platform, there's another step that they had to come down, and Butch almost falls down because of that, which we would see that several times throughout the night. But Butch was the first one to trip. He didn't let him face it. He just kept doing this. I am really glad that the Bushwhackers were the ones that went over on this one, considering their win-loss record.
Yeah.
And I'm actually happy that Luke was the one who got the pin, because I think normally Butch is the one that usually gets the pin, but in this time Luke got the pin.
Yeah, I got them written down as winning against the Russos, which that match didn't last long at all.
5.5 minutes.
Yeah, 5.5 minutes. Your quickest match, of course, is the Heenan match. Yeah, I guess it was par. I guess it was par for the event. You got a couple of them that were under. You got several of them that are under 7 minutes. 7 minutes long.
But you got 14 matches on a wrestling card. There's going to be a lot of short matches.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Again, for a lot of these matches, they don't need to last 20 minutes. Because most of them did not have a significant storyline going into the event.
Right.
Which was normal for the time.
And I guess if you got a short match like that, there's not a whole lot of planning of your predetermined way we're going to lose, or key points in the match. It's like, all right, you're going to get in there and do this at the beginning, and this is the end. Y'all figure out the other 2 minutes that you got going on, in the middle of the match.
Okay, so the event was 3 hours and 40 minutes. That's 220. You divide that by 14 matches, that's 15 minutes a match, and that's no entrance, no interviews, no nothing. That is,
yeah. You got a lot of downtime with interviews and all that stuff.
So yeah, there's going to be a lot of short matches. I always enjoy bushwhacking matches. You're guaranteed to have a good time.
I never was a big fan of theirs. I don't know why. Maybe it's the fact that back in that day, it was like wrestling's real. Maybe it's like they're just not serious. I don't know. I don't know what it was. Like I said, I always liked the high flyer type.
Like the Rockers.
Yeah, like the Rockers, like Rock and Roll Express, fantastic.
Well, those two teams would eventually team up together for the #1 Survivor Series. Then another fun segment about this was when the Bushwhackers come back from the match. they run into Sean Mooney and they start licking him all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then after that was what really had all the potential to be probably the best match of the night. Mr. Perfect and the Blue Blazer.
Which was Owen Hart.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that match and I was like, oh, this is going to be a good one. You know, we were watching the replay and all, and I watching it, you know, after not seeing it for even many years. But the Blue Blazer, when he had that persona, he was always this high flyer, doing this crazy stuff off the turnbuckle and flipping and all that. There's wasn't a whole lot of that in this match. Yeah, a couple spots there, but you know, match didn't last that long. I don't think.
Lasted 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, which I mean, that's for par.
Which
None of them lasted
is
that
not a
long.
lot of time for them to really have a great match.
Right.
But it was good, and they went through a few things where you got to do like a sequence to be able to do something. You can't do it. You do a couple little flips, and then you end up doing it.
Yeah, and they were pushing Kurt Hennig, you know, Mr. Perfect at that point in time, having you know a perfect record.
Yes.
So I can see why you know they had him win over the Blue Blazer. Sadly, that you know it's the Blue Blazer was you know eventually his downfall. You know, many years later, you know, I remember that night well. I was coming home when I walked in the room because my uncle was, you know, me and him watched together. And I had just gotten home, and when I walked in, it's like, you know, it's like, you know, nothing really going on. I was like, what's going on? I said, I know, you know, Owen Hart fell from the ceiling. I was like, what? And I was like, wow. And then just a few minutes later, you know, Jay Lawler, no, JR announced him had passed away, and you could see something was not right. And they were talking about, you know, this is not part of the storyline. You know, this is the real deal. And
Yeah, I was watching it that night.
yeah, I remember that well.
The reason that Owen Hart was, as far as I know, the reason that he was put in a mask was that they did not want to have him recognized as Brett's brother, have him be his own person. So the Blue Blazer superhero.
Yeah, and like I said, I always liked his matches.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good matches back in the day.
Yeah, if they could have been given a 15-minute match, they would have had the best match of the night.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. Both of them good athletes, good wrestlers back in the day. And I see that, you know, he was more of a high flyer back then with the Blue Blazer, but then he turned more technical wrestler, and he became a hard part of the, you know, mixed in with the Hart Foundation and all.
Yeah. So the next match wasn't really a great match. Demolition versus the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji for the tag titles.
Yeah, that was a handicap match.
First that I can recall the tag title match being a handicap match. Why they had Mr. Fuji come in to do this, I don't know if this was to give him one last hurrah or what.
Yeah, they did a little segment with him running a marathon, a 5K, you know, in his suit and cane and all that, and getting ready for the match and all.
And he did not break a sweat.
No, he didn't break a sweat. And I always liked Demolition. I'll tell you a little story. Um, I remember it was a Saturday afternoon, and wrestling was on at my buddy's house. And me and him were big into wrestling, and we were used to watching CCW, Continental Championship Wrestling, and we're sitting there, watching it, and we were familiar with the characters and wrestlers from CCW. You had Hot Stuff was there at one point in time. Paul was there. Paulie Dangerously is what he was called. Paul Heyman. And then you had Sid Vicious was there as Lord Humongous, which to me was the best Lord Humongous there ever was, because it was several of them over the years. And then there's a guy called Willie B. Hurt. Was a black guy, and then there was Alan Martin, who was an ex-referee who turned wrestler, kind of like the Danny Davis thing back in WWF. And Ruby Hurt was a babyface, and there was this thing. See how big he was then. He was having a feud with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, because they had done something to his son, Ruby Hurt's son, on storyline, hurt him or hit him or something. And that's when he went out there and he was, giving a really good promo to that. But and Alan Martin was a heel. Well, we're sitting there, one Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, we're sitting there watching our wrestling's on, and we're sitting there, and this is old squash matches, type, and we're sitting there watching, and they announce Willie Hurt and Alan Martin as tag team. I was like, oh my God, it's Willie B. Hurt and Alan Martin. I said, I wonder who they're going to fight. And then Demolition's music come on, and we just start busting out laughing. Like, oh my God, they're fixing to get destroyed. But I always liked Demolition. The music genre, was always set with me, I guess, because of the more heavier metal sound.
Oh yeah, that set the tone for what you knew what the match was going to be.
And
who would have thought that Smash would end up becoming the Repo Man?
Yeah, it's like totally different.
I know.
Gimmick and all.
And that was his idea.
Was it?
Yeah. Smash, that was his idea to become the Repo Man.
That was after Demolition split up, I guess.
Yes.
When Crush came in and Axe had some health issues.
Mm-hmm.
See, I didn't realize back in that time, it's like, wow, they got another guy there. Why is Axe not wrestling anymore? This new guy's wrestling. It's like, now years later you find out, oh, okay, well, that's why. He was having health issues, and they brought him another guy in there to tag with him, because they already had a good thing going. Powers of Pain was with Mr. Fuji. You had a lot of good managers back in that day, and you didn't realize that those managers at one time, were wrestlers. You had Fuji, you had Jimmy Hart, Bobby Heenan, of course, was always the Weasel, was always the big one. Sonny did a little bit for just a little while with LOD. Slick was there.
Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, Miss Elizabeth is the big one.
Yeah, there was some, and it's a shame that they did away with that.
Yeah, you don't have that much anymore.
No.
And you have wrestlers that come down with their factions, playing the manager or valet role. You don't really have these characters that you are the manager. That's your job.
Yeah, right now we have Paul Heyman, Scarlett, Paul Ellering. Those are the only ones that I can name off, right?
Yeah. There was a guy named Bruno back years ago that was in some of the smaller organizations. I remember him. Looked like a Weasley little dude.
But that match wasn't a very good match. However, Mr. Fuji did do some good things. So he moved around not too bad. He was 54, I think, for this match.
It's like 2 years older than I am right now.
And to think that he climbed up on the top rope and jumped off, landed on his heels, and his heels swept out from underneath him. That was a rough bump for him.
I would imagine at that age.
Yeah.
Whole match was 8 minutes 20 seconds. Pretty long match for this card.
And
He
then,
wound up being the one that got pinned.
Yep.
And I could see the finishing move they did with him. They were very careful on that, because I think one of them was holding him over their knee, and the other one was coming off the top rope with an elbow, and you could see that he didn't really hit it, you know. And it's like, well, he's protecting the old guy.
But it gave Demolition that revenge finally over Fuji for turning on him.
Mm-hmm.
The next match was Dino Bravo versus Rugged Ronnie Garvin.
That match was horrible.
Yeah, that was also that was the second shortest match of the night too.
Yeah, that one was pretty quick, pretty hard. It took them longer to walk down the ring than it did actually wrestle.
Yeah,
and I don't know, because I remember Ronnie Garvin back in some of the smaller stuff. I don't know. Of course, Dino Bravo was with Hart. Is that right? Working with Jimmy Hart at one point in time. He may have been there at that match.
What was interesting about this one here is I think this is the first time. No, it wasn't the first time. Terry Funk was. But it was one of those few moments where a former NWA World Champion showed up at WrestleMania. The Funks were the first, I think. Dory Jr. and Terry.
Yeah.
And now I think Ronnie Garvin.
Championship wrestling.
The little sideways slam finished him off. And then after the match, Garvin started doing the Garvin stomp.
Mm-hmm.
Which would have been preferred on Dino, but yeah.
Yeah, Ronnie Garvin was one of those guys that came to WWF and wasn't used that much. It was just like one of those characters that come in, you're just part of the roster, but you're not really getting pushed.
Which is sad considering that Ronnie was the world champion, although for a very short amount of time. But still, he got that title.
He was doing something right.
Yes. And he only stayed in the WWF for a little over a year.
Yeah, he wasn't there very long. Dino Bravo wound up winning that one.